The .NET framework, pronounced as .NET, is a proprietary software framework developed by Microsoft that runs primarily on Microsoft Windows. It was the predominant implementation of the Common Language Infrastructure (CLI) until being superseded by the cross-platform .NET project. It includes a large class library called Framework Class Library (FCL) and provides language interoperability. Each language can use code written in other languages across several programming languages. Programs written for .NET Framework execute in a software environment, in contrast to a hardware environment, named the Common Language Runtime (CLR). The CLR is an application virtual machine that provides services such as security, memory management, and exception handling. As such, computer code written using .NET Framework is called managed code. FCL and CLR together constitute the .NET Framework. FCL provides the user interface, data access, database connectivity, cryptography, web application development, numeric algorithms, and network communications. Programmers produce software by combining their source code with .NET Framework and other libraries. The framework is intended to be used by most new applications created for the Windows platform. Microsoft also produces an integrated development environment for .NET software called Visual Studio. .NET Framework began as proprietary software, although the firm worked to standardize the software stack almost immediately, even before its first release. Despite the standardization efforts, developers, mainly those in the free and open source software communities, expressed their unease with the selected terms and the prospects of any free and open source implementation, especially regarding software patents. Since then, Microsoft has changed .NET development to more closely follow a contemporary model of a community-developed software project, including issuing an update to its patent promising to address the concerns. In April 2019, Microsoft released .NET Framework 4.8, the last major version of the framework as a proprietary offering, followed by .NET Framework 4.8.1 in August 2022. Only monthly security and reliability bug fixes to that version have been released since then. No further changes to that version are planned. The .NET Framework will continue to be included with future releases of Windows and continue to receive security updates, with no plans to remove it as of November 2023. The .NET Framework is a set of libraries and a runtime originally designed by Microsoft. All .NET programs compile to a bytecode called Microsoft Intermediate Language (MSIL). The MSIL is run by the Common Language Runtime (CLR). Below you can find several examples of Hello World in various languages that support the .NET Framework. Hello World is a program that displays Hello World on the display device. It's used for illustrating the basic syntax for constructing a working program. It can also be used as a sanity test to make sure that a language's compiler, development environment, and runtime environment are all working correctly. Boo is an object-oriented, statically typed, general-purpose programming language that seeks to make use of the Common Language Infrastructure's support for Unicode, internationalization, and web applications, while using a Python-inspired syntax and a special focus on language and compiler extensibility. Some features of note include type inference, generators, multi-methods, optional duck typing, macros, true closures, currying, and first-class functions. Hello World program indicates the beginning of a comment in C#. Comments are not executed by the C# compiler. They are intended for the developers to better understand a piece of code. To learn more about comments in C#, visit C# comments. Namespace Hello World. The namespace keyword is used to define our own namespace. Here we are creating a namespace called Hello World. Just think of namespace as a container which consists of classes, methods, and other namespaces. To get a detailed overview of namespaces, visit C# namespaces. Class Hello. The above statement creates a class named Hello in C#. Since C# is an object-oriented programming language, creating a class is mandatory for the program's execution. Static void main, string, args. Main is a method of class Hello. The execution of every C# program starts from the main method. So it is mandatory for a C# program to have a main method. The signature syntax of the main method is system console.writeLine, hello world. For now, just remember that this is the piece of code that prints "Hello World" to the output screen. You'll learn more about how it works in the later chapters. Your C++ program. In C++, any line starting with // is a comment. Comments are intended for the person reading the code to better understand the functionality of the program. It is completely ignored by the C++ compiler. #include iostream. The #include is a preprocessor directive used to include files in our program. The above code is including the contents of the iostream file. This allows us to use count in our program to print output on the screen. For now, just remember that we need to use #include iostream to use count that allows us to print output on the screen. Int main. A valid C++ program must have the main function. The curly braces indicate the start and the end of the function. The execution of code beings from this function. std count hello world. std count prints the content inside the quotation marks. It must be followed by the format string. In our example, hello world is the format string. Note is used to indicate the end of a statement. Return 0. The return 0 statement is the exit status of the program. In simple terms, the program ends with this statement. This is the code for a simple console project that prints "Hello World" to stdout and exits with an exit code of entry point, a .NET attribute that marks the method that you use to set the entry point of your program source. Let main argv. This defines a function called main with a single parameter argv. Because this is the program entry point, argv will be an array of strings. The contents of the array are the arguments that were passed to the program when it was executed. Printfun hello world. The printfun function outputs the string passed as its first argument, also appending a new line. 0, F# functions always return a value, and the value returned is the result of the last expression in the function. Putting 0 as the last line means that the function will always return 0, an integer. This is actually not a string even though it looks like one. It's actually a text writer format, which optionally allows the usage of statically type-checked arguments. But for the purpose of a "Hello World" example, it can be thought of as being a string. Reflection is a powerful feature in C# that allows you to explore assemblies and their types dynamically. One fascinating aspect of reflection is its capability to emit Illinois intermediate language code on runtime. This enables you to create types, methods, variables, classes, events, delegates, and more. In this post, we'll walk through the process of writing a simple Hello World program using reflection and Illinois code. NEML is a general-purpose, high-level, statically typed programming language designed for platforms using the Common Language Infrastructure, .NET Mono. It offers functional, object-oriented, aspect-oriented, reflective and imperative features. It has a simple C#-like syntax and a powerful metaprogramming system. In June 2012, the core developers of NEML were hired by the Czech software development company JetBrains. The team was focusing on developing Nitra, a framework to implement extant and new programming languages. Both the NEML language and Nitra have seemingly been abandoned or discontinued by JetBrains. Nitra has not been updated by its original creators since 2017, and NEML is now maintained entirely by the Russian Software Development Network, independently from JetBrains. Although no major updates have been released yet and development is progressing very slowly. Neither NEML nor Nitra have been mentioned or referenced by JetBrains for years. Oxygen, formerly known as Chrome, is a programming language developed by REM Object Software for Microsoft's Common Language Infrastructure, the Java platform and Cocoa. Oxygen is based on Delphi's Object Pascal, but also has influences from C#, Eiffel, Java, F# and other languages. Compared to the now deprecated Delphi.NET, Oxygen does not emphasize total backward compatibility, but is designed to be a reinvention of the language, be a good citizen on the managed development platforms, and leverage all the features and technologies provided by the .NET and Java runtimes. Oxygen is a commercial product and offers full integration into Microsoft's Visual Studio IDE on Windows, as well as its own IDE called Fire for use on macOS. Oxygen is one of 6 languages supported by the underlying Elements compiler toolchain, next to C#, Swift, Java, Go and Mercury, based on Visual Basic.NET. From 2008 to 2012, REM Object Software licensed its compiler and IDE technology to Embarcadero to be used in their Embarcadero Prism product. Starting in the fall of 2011, Oxygen became available in 2 separate editions, with the second edition adding support for the Java and Android runtimes. Starting with the release of XE4, Embarcadero Prism is no longer part of the RAD Studio SKU. Numerous support and upgrade paths for Prism customers exist to migrate to Oxygen. As of 2016, there is only one edition of Oxygen, which allows development on Windows or Mac OS, and which can create executables for Windows, Linux, WebAssembly.NET, iOS, Android, Java and Mac OS. PowerShell is the de facto scripting language for managing Windows machines as servers. Microsoft has made it quite clear that PowerShell is here to stay and will become the preferred way to manage Windows servers in the future. Jeffrey Snover is largely credited as the designer behind the language, while Bruce Payette and James Truha were also on the project, and in an interview in 2017, Snover explained the motivation behind creating PowerShell. "I'd been driving a bunch of managing changes, and then I originally took the Unix tools and made them available on Windows, and then it just didn't work. Right? Because there's a core architectural difference between Windows and Linux. On Linux, everything's an ASCII text file, so anything that can manipulate that is a managing tool." AWK, grep, said. "Happy days. I brought those tools available on Windows, and then they didn't help manage Windows because in Windows, everything's an API that returns structured data. So, that didn't help. I came up with this idea of PowerShell, and I said, hey, we can do this better." Originally, PowerShell was to be called Monad and its ideas were published in a white paper titled Monad Manifesto. Shortly after releasing the Beta 3 version, Microsoft formally renamed Monad to Windows PowerShell, followed by the Release Candidate 1 version. PowerShell is now up to version 5.1 for stable builds, and the new 6.0 version, which was announced in 2016, is in public beta. The largest change in this version is it's now open source and will now be called PowerShell Core, as it runs on .NET Core as opposed to the .NET framework which previous versions use. Python is a very simple language and has a very straightforward syntax. It encourages programmers to program without boilerplate, prepared code. The simplest directive in Python is the print directive. It simply prints out a line, and also includes a new line, unlike in C. There are 2 major Python versions, Python 2 and Python 3. Python 2 and 3 are quite different. This tutorial uses Python 3 because it's more semantically correct and supports newer features. For example, one difference between Python 2 and 3 is the print statement. In Python 2, the print statement is not a function, and therefore it is invoked without parentheses. However, in Python 3, it is a function and must be invoked with parentheses. To print a string in Python 3, just write Visual Basic.NET, VB.NET, is a programming language that was created by Microsoft in 2001. Beyond that, Wikipedia doesn't have much to offer in terms of historical information, so let's move on. In terms of features, however, Wikipedia has a little more to offer. For instance, VB.NET is statically typed, but the type system is both strong and weak as well as safe and unsafe. As for syntax, VB.NET is structured, which reminds me of languages like Pascal and MATLAB, where blocks of code are marked by keywords, rather than braces or white space. Beyond that, VB.NET has several versions. In fact, VB.NET only really refers to the language before 2005, but the syntax is largely the same today. Of course, I've sort of lumped them together in the same way I've recognized Python as one language instead of 2. Microsoft started development on the .NET framework in the late 1990s, originally under the name of Next Generation Windows Services, NGWS. By late 2001, the first beta versions of .NET Framework 1.0 were released. The first version of .NET Framework was released on the 13th of February 2002, bringing managed code to Windows NT 4.0, 98, 2000, ME and XP. Since the first version, Microsoft has released 9 more upgrades for .NET Framework, 7 of which have been released along with a new version of Visual Studio. 2 of these upgrades, .NET Framework 2.0 and 4.0, have upgraded Common Language Runtime, CLR. New versions of .NET Framework replace older versions when the CLR version is the same. The .NET Framework family also includes 2 versions for mobile or embedded device use. A reduced version of the framework, the .NET Compact Framework, is available on Windows CE platforms, including Windows mobile devices such as smartphones. Additionally, the .NET Micro Framework is targeted at severely resource-constrained devices. .NET Framework 4.8 was announced as the final version of .NET Framework, with future work going into the rewritten and cross-platform .NET Core platform, later, simply .NET, which shipped as .NET 5 in November 2020. However, .NET Framework 4.8.1 was released in August 2022. Since June 22, 2000, Microsoft announced its The .NET strategy has been more than 7 years now. As the foundation of the .NET strategy, Microsoft's .NET Framework has also been released in several versions. Let's take a look at what versions of the .NET Framework Microsoft have released over the years. For versions of the Microsoft .NET Compact Framework, see the article How to Determine the Version of the .NET Compact Framework.